Hello, I'm Alexander Campbell, and I'm joined by my colleague India Flanagan. We're both barristers at Cornerstone Barristers in London, and amongst other areas, we specialise in mental capacity and the court of protection. We're very pleased to be joining you today to present this webinar on restraint, mental capacity, and the court of protection. Restraint in one form or another is a feature of many different situations where someone is being cared for or receiving medical treatment. But it is an area where the law is often very poorly understood. And so today we hope to provide an overview of some of the key features of the use of restraint in cases where someone lacks mental capacity. And these are the topics we're planning to cover. So first of all, I'm going to touch on what exactly we mean by restraint, situations where restraint is permitted by the Mental Capacity Act 2005, and also some of the legal limits on the use of that restraint, but also how to differentiate between when something is just restraint or when something crosses over into being a deprivation of liberty. And then India's going to cover some common scenarios where the use of restraint arises in dealing with people who lack mental capacity. India's going to cover some of the key case law and guidance on the use of restraint, as well as providing some practical tips for restraint cases. I wanted to start just by touching on the context. Restraint can arise in all sorts of different situations. It might be a situation where restraint is used frequently, almost as a matter of course. So, for example, someone who receives professional care might have a care plan or a positive behaviour support plan, which provides for restraint to be used quite commonly if that person becomes emotionally dysregulated and has outbursts of behaviour that require them to be restrained for their own safety. But the context of restraint can also include all sorts of one-off decisions, and those can be decisions of varying degrees of seriousness or intrusion for the person who's receiving that intervention. So it might be as simple as just holding somebody's arm to help them cross the road, to ensure they can get across the road safely. Or it might be something much more intrusive, so restraining somebody so they can have a blood test, giving them a sedative so that they can be moved from hospital placement to a care home placement, or it might be applying strong physical restraint to prevent them from hurting themselves if they're engaged in a serious behavioural incident where they're risking causing harm. And there can be, as I said, confusion about what legal basis there is for restraint to be used in different situations. There can be confusion about whether a particular episode of restraint is permitted under the Mental Capacity Act, or whether someone actually needs to go to the Court of Protection to get specific authorization for that intervention, or whether the person can deliver that intervention using the common law doctrine of necessity.